So in this chapter, the boss fixes the fountain, and as he suspected, it was, as he patched up the hole, the water started to rise, and it quickly rose to the level he wanted it, or the level it had been. Then he installed a pump, and he set off a pipe that went from the well all the way to the chapel, and he set up the pump. Now, pumps can be curious things. There are some pumps that work by drawing a vacuum, where they suck the air out and then the water level rises, just like you're drinking out of a straw. Now, there's a problem with that because you can only pull the water so high up, only about 30 feet. Because after that, the pressure drops so low that even at room temperature, the water starts boiling. Because as the pressure drops, the water's kind of held together by surface tension and the air pressure keeping it down. It pushes the air down. But as the pressure releases, you have one little water molecule which is moving a little bit faster than the others. And so as it's moving a little bit faster, it manages to get up and break the surface tension and fly away. But they get shoved back down by the air. Another one tries to go up, and it gets shoved back down by the air. It bounces into the air and bounces back down into the water. You don't really notice it. Maybe a little bit of evaporation. But if the air pressure is gone, the water flies up and up and up and up. And once it gets far enough up, it's essentially a gas because it's not next to its water buddies and there's no surface tension. So the water's up in the air, gets sucked out. So you can only pull water up about 30 feet because then it starts boiling. But if you put the pump down at the bottom of the well, and then the water pulls up, you're pushing the water up. So you no longer have that effect. All you have to worry about is the pipe enough to keep the pressure? So down at the bottom of the well, you put up 40 feet of water pressure. Water pressure can be measured in feet. It's a very common thing. When you measure water pressure in feet, it's called head. So when you talk about, when they talk about water plants, this water plant has 100 feet of head, which means that the water is a 100-foot tall column above the ground, or is pressurized to that because you can put air pressure behind it and push the water, so you can essentially have what looks and feels like a really tall water tower, but is actually short. Most of them don't do that. It's usually more trouble than it's worth. You usually just take the water, put a whole bunch of it up at the top, put a pipe down the middle. Our town just has a big tall cylinder. So when the water level drops, we lose pressure. But it's on top of the hill, which is essentially this huge pipe because the water goes from the reservoir, or goes from the tank down the pipe down the hill. So anyway, you put a pump at the bottom and you can lift the water up as high as the pressure on the pipe can take it. And so a lot of the times where you see a pump where they're pumping on the pump like this, they're actually running a steel rod all the way down the pipe. And at the bottom of the steel rod is a plate with a one-way valve. So what happens is you pump and the water lifts it up an inch. You lift all the water in the column up an inch. And you push down, and as it pushes down, the water goes through the one-way valve and up above the plate. And then when you pull up, it lifts the column of water above it, and the water beneath goes up. And you push down, and the water that was below it, the water that was below the plate can flow through the one-way valve. It lifts, pump, boom. And so here you are, you're pumping. Now, these plates and these valves aren't perfect, and they leak. So that's why if you ever are at a hand pump, just remember that you have to pump it quite a bit. And the amount that you have to pump it really depends on how deep the well is. You have to keep pumping it and pumping it and pumping it. And it's going to get harder because at first you're lifting, maybe 6 inches of water. And then you're lifting a foot of water. And then you're lifting 50 feet of water. So if you have a pump 50 feet down with a 50-foot steel rod, because you need a strong rod to hold that much water. This 50-foot steel rod, if you're lifting all of this water, it's going to get heavy, which means a lot of work, even at the end of a long lever. So it's pump, pump, pump. And it gets harder and harder and harder until finally the water comes out. And then if you keep pumping, you only have to pump a little bit because you have to, you just keep pushing up the water as it comes. But if you stop, come back 5-6 hours later, all of that water is seeped down around the plate, has seeped down around the one-way valve. So that, you have to go back and you have to pump all the water up again and then start getting out. So he set this up with fireworks. Now, your Pop and Lolly have experience setting off fireworks. We have been trained by people. We have actually been signed. There are papers filed with the ATF, which is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We have papers filed with the ATF that says we're allowed to take care of other people's fireworks, which is, kind of cool. And we've set off fireworks, the real big fireworks where, it's like this 8-inch tube. You set off, it was an 8-inch one that you fused, right, Lolly?
12.
12. Okay, so your Lolly fused a 12-inch firework. So this is 12 inches across. It's a full foot across with a big sack of gunpowder underneath it. And your Lolly held this in her lap, and she stuck a brass pin in through the paper wrapping, in through the gunpowder at the bottom, and put a fuse in it. Actually put an electronic detonator in it, because it's something 12 inches you don't want to set off by hand. You can. People have set off bigger ones by hand. But typically for things like that, you want to be far away. And so we've done this. We've set off, 3-inch ones, 4-inch ones. One time I set off a box that we didn't know what it was. It was seized by the local sheriff's office in a drug raid. So there were drug dealers, and they had these fireworks in the local sheriff's office, and the DEA were like, we don't want to deal with this. But our buddy was friends with the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office was like, you do fireworks. And buddy was like, yeah. It's like, how would you like to take care of this stuff? Take this stuff off our hands. Destroy it. Because, you can't just have it. You have to destroy it and get rid of it. So we were tasked with destroying it. Now, one way to destroy fireworks is to set them off. Another way is to soak them in diesel fuel and burn them. Because what happens is the diesel fuel burns, but it burns slow enough that it doesn't cause the detonation. Because gunpowder is sort of weird in the way it burns. It doesn't explode like dynamite. When you think of an explosion of C4, of TNT, of all of that stuff, it's this sort of propagating shock wave where the chemicals fall apart and the shock wave moves through it at faster than the speed of sound. But gunpowder isn't like that. Gunpowder just burns really, really fast. And because the gunpowder burns really, really fast, it builds up a lot of pressure. So it builds up a lot of pressure, but it doesn't get that whole shockwave propagating thing. Now, smokeless gunpowder, which is something else, is something called a D-to-D explosive, which is deflagration. Deflagration is burning really quickly. To detonation, and detonation is the explosion. So nitrocellulose, or smokeless powder, does the burn really fast, and then once it gets hot enough and the pressure is built up enough, it explodes. So it burns at, a few hundred feet a second. And then all of a sudden, the things are right where it's hot enough, there's enough pressure, and all of a sudden you get the shock wave forming. And once you get the shock wave forming, it goes from a few hundred feet per second to a few thousand feet per second. It goes boom. But that's at a scale so fast that we can't see. That's why gunpowder feels like it explodes, even though it doesn't really. It just burns really, really quickly. So here we were. We had this box. It was unlabeled. We know that inside of the box there were 16 tubes. And 16 3-inch tubes. And so the box was on the side. Big enough that one person could comfortably carry it, but small enough that one person could comfortably carry it, but big enough that you couldn't really carry two of them. Or it'd be awkward to carry two of them. So we had this box and we staked it down because you don't want this toppling over, because you don't want to fire 3-inch rounds of explosives at people. It's generally bad. So we staked it down, we set it up, and I was the one tasked with doing this. And that was so awesome. And the way it works was you light it, you turn, and you walk away. You never run, because if you run, you can trip. And if you trip, you fall. If you fall, you may fall too close. And you turn your back because, the back of your head is much more impact resistant than the front of your head, because the front of your head is your face, and you don't want to get things in your face. You don't want to get things in your eyes. So there you are with the safety glasses and the ear protection and the hard hat. Always a hard hat. Always natural clothes, natural fibers, always long sleeves. So you wear cotton, you wear wool, or you wear the really cool stuff like Nomex, which is what firefighters wear. And so you wear gloves, you wear cotton, you wear wool, because cotton and wool, they burn. But what happens with synthetics is they melt and they burn. So if you're wearing a polyester shirt and you catch an ember, because, these things are exploding, and there's embers flying everywhere. If you catch an ember, the polyester catches fire and then starts melting. And as it melts, it sticks to you. So here you have something that's sticking to you and burning. The wool, the cotton, the linen, they burn and they fall off. So you're wearing a cotton t-shirt, it burns, it gets a hole in it, it falls off. The wool, it burns, it gets a hole in it, it falls off. Polyester, it burns, it sticks to you and keeps burning and burning and burning. So, always natural fibers when setting off fireworks. So anyway, touched it, turned, walked away. And I got a reasonable distance. I hear this whoomp! And when you're setting off fireworks, it is so different being underneath them and being next to them than it is when you're far away. And then another thump in my chest, because you just feel the thing. Whoomp! It's like you can feel it push through you. You can feel it hit your front and your back. You just feel the air pushed out of you. Whoomp! And another one. Whoomp! 16 of these things went up. And after about number 2 or 3, I started looking up, and it was beautiful color. I can't remember what colors they were, but it's those nice sparkly chrysanthemum ones with all of the spread out. Very nice looking. I'm sure the person who was serving a long time in jail for drugs is disappointed they didn't get to see or set that off. But if you don't go to do bad things and go to jail, then you get to enjoy some good things too. But that was fun setting off fireworks. It's great fun setting them off. It's great fun watching them. I love the smell. Now, there are a lot of smells that I don't like. Most perfumes do. Most fragrances that gets put into soaps and makeup. I don't know if you noticed this, but like makeup has a smell to it that they put in. I don't know why, but even like the foundation stuff has a smell, and that's not a good smell to me. But give me the sulfur. Give me the nitrogen dioxide, the nitrous oxide. Give me the ozone. All of these smells that you get from the burning gunpowder are just exciting to me. They smell wonderful to me. It's like fresh. It's not fresh air, but it's alive and it feels fantastic to me, and it's probably really bad for my health, but I love the smell of these things. But so here we were, and we were setting off the fireworks, and Bob, my friend Bob, who runs the fireworks and does all of these things, came up with this great invention. Because normally when you're lighting the fireworks, you do it with a road flare. Because you want to have something that burns for 15 minutes or so, long enough that you can go around and light a whole bunch of fireworks. And is something that's not like tetchy, that, don't need something expensive. There are some people who use like a propane torch. So like making creme brulee, that sort of thing. Or use a plumber's torch and you just keep the thing burning and you just go boom, boom, boom. People who smoke are fond of using cigars. So here you are, you're smoking your cigar. But people smoking cigars around explosives is totally a thing and really kind of stupid. But, once they're all in the tubes and you're lighting them off, taking the cigar and lighting the fuse is not that bad. But, there are people who do it with cigars. But a lot of people do it with road flares because they're inexpensive. They burn 15, 20 minutes, long enough for most shows. And you just go boom, boom, boom. Because it's a lot of light, a lot of heat. Well, Bob had this idea of like, hey, you have these road flares, but you don't really need to bend down. It's really bad bending down over the tubes. Would it be great if you could stand up, perhaps at a distance? So what he did was he got long stick, like a mop handle. Love mop handles. So useful. So many uses. Got like a mop handle. And attached this screw thing to the top of it, where it's just like a fitting sort of thing, where it's a round tube with a screw going in the side, a set screw. And what happens is you stick the road flare in, you take the screw and you screw it down, and the screw goes through the side and sticks into the road flare and holds it there, so it presses it up against the other side. So I had these things, these long sticks with the road flares at the end. So you could just walk over and you could be like 5 feet away and just tap the things and light them off. It was so awesome, especially because late at night, there's 5 or 6 of us setting off all of these fireworks, and we're standing out there holding up the sticks, and it looked, like torches from some wizard movie from like the 60s or the 50s, and they didn't have big budgets, so they had road flares on sticks. But it really looks cool and creepy because it's this great red glow. So I had the road flares on sticks and lighting the fire, and the fireworks go off. So the boss did a good thing here, and the pump is a total improvement over the well because it's so much easier to just lift up the water than lift up the bucket, and you don't have to worry about the chain, all of this stuff. So he got the well going, he got the pump going, everybody's happy except for Merlin. And Merlin was like, yeah, I'm gonna sit around here and watch you fail, though Merlin should have known that the boss isn't going to fail at these things because he hasn't been failing at these things. And he talked about Merlin being in the Weather Bureau and Merlin being impossibly bad at the Weather Bureau. And let me say, there are times where I have been impossibly bad at guessing things. Where it's like, okay, this is, it's like, okay, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And it's like figuring out what's going to happen next. And there are times where it's like, I know I am not going to guess what happens next. And it's just like, I've been beaten down. It's like, I know that I'm not going to get what happens next. And it's like, okay, fine. I'm just going to go with the opposite of my instincts. I know that everything I do is a failure. With whatever, these few things where it's just, everything I do is a failure. I'm just going to do the opposite. It was like a trivia quiz or something like that. It was just like getting the answers wrong, And so I decided, okay, just give the opposite of what I think it's going to be. Guess what? Nah, got it wrong still. And that happens a lot. And there's a great saying that you can't win for losing, which is you can't win for losing. I'm going to do a separate video on that because that is just such a cool phrase. But let me tell you, it is often quite the case where you can't win for losing. And that's Merlin's situation. I imagine he was probably going to be like, okay, I am so bad at this. I think it's going to rain. I'm going to say sun. But even if you're aware that you're so bad at something that you'll get it wrong and you try and circumvent that, you will usually fail. And it's one of these sad facts of life, and I wish I understood it better because it shouldn't work out that way. Because if you know that you're wrong and you decide, okay, I'm going to do the wrong thing, it should be the right thing, but it rarely is. So I'm not sure about that. But it's something that we have to live with in this fallen world of ours.